Welcome, dear listener, to tonight's enchanting bedtime, tales set in the rugged and mystical lands of the Norse. As the evening draws in and the stars begin to sprinkle the night sky, let us journey together to a place of legends and mighty heroes. Tonight's story is the Hammer of Thor and the Serpent's Wrath, a saga of bravery, myth, and adventure in the serene village of Fjordhelm, nestled between majestic cliffs and the whispering sea. The villagers are celebrating Midsummer's Eve, marking the height of summer with joy and togetherness. But beneath the merriment, a stir of destiny is about to sweep through their lives. As you settle into your bed, let the sounds of the ancient festivities lull you. Picture the flickering fires and the vibrant garments of the villagers. Feel the sudden chill as the sea begins to roar, an omen that foretells the awakening of a mythical sea serpent from the depths. In the heart of this tempest, a young Viking warrior named Eric senses a call to a grand quest, one that involves seeking the legendary Hammer of Thor. To save his people, imagine his determined steps as he rushes to consult the wise elder, the wind howling around him as if echoing the urgency of his mission. Now, let your eyes close gently as you follow Eric on his destined path. Let the rhythmic sounds of the ancient Norse world, the clash of waves, and the distant thunder be the backdrop to your dreams tonight. Drift away into the realm of adventure and myth, where heroes rise and legends come alive under the starlit sky. Rest well, brave traveler of dreams, as the tale of courage and determination unfolds, guiding you through the night into a peaceful slumber. Chapter 1. The Omen of the Waves. In the tranquil village of Fjordhelm, nestled between towering cliffs and the restless sea, Midsummer's Eve was upon the land. The villagers, adorned in vibrant tunics and skirts, prepared for a night of feasting and joy, a celebration of the sun at its zenith. Little did they know their lives were about to be changed forever. As the golden sun dipped towards the horizon, casting a fiery glow across the village, a sudden chill descended upon the festivities. The sea, usually a rhythmic, soothing presence, roared with an uncharacteristic fury. Huge waves began to crash against the cliffs with violent force, sending sprays of icy water over the revelers, extinguishing their fires and dampening their spirits. Among the villagers, a young warrior named Eric stood watching the tempest unfold. His heart, always attuned to the rhythms of nature, sensed a disturbance deeper than a mere storm. As the sea thrashed, a colossal shadow emerged from beneath the waves, an ancient and monstrous sea serpent known in legends as Jormungandr. Its scales shimmered with the colors of the deep sea, and its eyes glowed like bioluminescent corals. The beast's awakening sent a wave of terror through Fjordhelm. Eric, with a resolve as steadfast as the mountains shielding their village, turned from the horrifying sight and sprinted towards the elder's house. His mind raced with tales of old, legends passed down through generations, that spoke of a time when such a beast would rise again, and the world would need a hero. Arriving at the elder's longhouse, Eric pushed open the heavy wooden door to find the village elder. Life, surrounded by ancient scrolls and artifacts, the room smelled of pine and old parchment. Leaf, with his long white beard and eyes reflecting years of wisdom, peered intently at Eric. Eric, what drives you to storm into this sacred place with such haste? Life's voice was calm, belying the storm outside. The sea serpent, Jermungandra, has up. I saw with my own eyes, Eric declared, his chest heaving. The midsummer's eve is darkened by its shadow. We must act. Leaf's gaze did not waver as he slowly nodded, his hands trembling slightly as he reached for a particularly ornate scroll. Unfurling it with care, he pointed to an ancient script illuminated by flickering candlelight. Then the prophecy unfolds. When the serpent rises and the sun wanes, a warrior shall seek the hammer of Thor to bring an end to the darkness. Leaf recited with a grave tone, "It seems, Eric, that fate has chosen you." Eric's heart pounded like the drum of war. The weight of his destiny pressed upon his shoulders. Yet within him a fierce determination kindled. He was not just a warrior of Fjordhelm, he was its protector, chosen by the threads of fate woven long before his birth. Then I will go, Eric resolved. I will find the hammer of Thor and save our village. Leif placed a hand on Eric's shoulder, his touch grounding. You will not be alone in this quest, young warrior. Gather those who are brave enough to face the end of the world. The journey ahead will be perilous, and only the strongest will survive. As Eric left the elder's house, the air thrummed with the power of the unleashed beast and the impending journey. He knew the road ahead would be fraught with dangers unknown and trials untested, but his will was ironclad. His purpose, the hammer of Thor awaited, and with it the hope of Fjordhelm. With the elder's words echoing in his mind, Eric strode through the storm-lashed village, his resolve as unyielding as the carved runestones that stood guard over their land. He sought the bravest and the strongest, those whose hearts were forged in the fierce love of their home and the legends of their ancestors. His first steps led him to the forge, where the clang of hammer on anvil spoke of strength and perseverance. There, amidst the sparks and flames, stood Astrid, the village's finest shield maiden. Her hair was as fiery as the forge itself, and her arms bore the muscles of a seasoned warrior. Astrid, Eric called above the din of her hand. She turned, her eyes narrowing not in anger, but in focus. Upon seeing Eric, her intense expression, "What brings you to my forge on such a night, Eric?" "The serpent, Jermungandra, has awakened. I am to seek the hammer of Thor, as foretold by the elders' prophecies. I need warriors who will stand by me," Eric declared, his voice steady despite the storm raging outside. Astrid set down her hammer, the decision clear in her eyes. "Then you shall have my sword and my shield. I stand with you, Eric." Together, they moved through the village, gathering a small but formidable band. Next, they approached Bjorn, known as much for his brawn as for his jovial spirit, who was securing his longship against the tempest's wrath. "Bjorn, will you let us sail without your strength?" Eric challenged, clapping the giant man on the back. Laughing heartily, Bjorn clasped, "I thought you never... I'll see this serpent meet the end of my essay." With each addition to their group, The weight of their impending journey grew, yet so did the strength of their resolve. They were a band of champions, each a hero in their own right, bound by a common cause. As the storm raged into the night, Eric and his chosen warriors gathered in the great hall. The elder Life joined them, carrying an ancient scroll, the same he had shown to Eric. He laid it before them on the long oak table, which was usually the heart of their feasts and celebrations. Now it served a restful. Hear now the words of the prophecy. Leaf began, his voice resonant and clear despite the howling wind outside. Beyond the realm of mortal kin, the hammer lies in wait, guarded by trials of strength, courage, and faith. Only those pure of heart and brave of soul will claim the power to make the serpent roll. The warriors listened, each face reflecting the gravity of their task. It was not merely a battle they were preparing for. It was a fulfillment of destiny, a quest woven into the very fabric of their myths. Tomorrow you set sail for the Isle of Mist, where the hammer is said to be guarded by the ancients. Prepare yourselves, for each step is fraught with peril unknown and foes unseen. The gods watch over you, Life concluded, his eyes sweeping over the group with a mix of pride and concern. As the meeting disbanded, the warriors returned to their homes under the cloak of night and storm. Eric stood a moment longer, gazing into the flickering torches that fought against the dark. The path ahead was shrouded in mystery, and the serpent's shadow loomed large. Yet in his heart burned a fire no storm could quench, the fire of a hero's spirit called to defend his home against the darkness. Before dawn could paint the sky with its earliest light, Eric ventured alone to the edge of Fjordhelm, where the ancient woods whispered secrets of the old world. Hidden within, a seer lived in solitude, a guardian of visions and a conduit of the gods' will. Her name was Freydis, and she was as much a part of the forest as the ancient oaks and whispering winds. The path to her dwelling was tangled and obscure, designed to deter those not earnest in their pursuit. But Eric, guided by the urgency of his quest, navigated the labyrinthine woods with a sureness that surprised even him. As the first light filtered through the dense canopy, he found Freydis' home, a humble, thatched hut encircled by a ring of standing stone, their surfaces carved with runes glowing faintly in the morning light. "Seer Freydis, I seek your guidance," Eric called, his voice steady in the still air. The door creaked open, and there she stood, draped in robes the color of the forest floor. Her eyes, clear and piercing, seemed to look right through him. "Eric of Fjordhelm, the echoes of your fate have already whispered through the leaves. Come," she beckoned, her voice as ethereal as the mist that rose from the ground. Inside, the hut was dimly lit by candles that cast dancing shadows upon walls lined with jars of herbs and bones of creatures long past. The air was thick with the scent of pine and sage. At the center of the room, a small fire burned, casting a comforting warmth. Freydis sat beside the fire, gesturing for Eric to join her. "You seek the hammer of Thor to defeat the serpent, Jörmungandr," she stated, not as a question, but as a certainty. "Yeah, Eric, the Elder's prophecy has guided me here. Freydis closed her eyes, her hands hovering over the small flames, which flickered as though reacting to her touch. Moments passed in silence, the only sound, the crackling of the fire and the distant call of a raven. Suddenly, Freydis' eyes snapped open, glowing momentarily with a supernatural light. "I see a path, veiled in mist and shadow," she began, her gaze unfocused, as if viewing scenes invisible to Eric. "The Isle of Mist holds what you see, but it is guarded by more than just the ancients, spirits of air and earth. They will test your worth." Eric listened, his heart pounding in anticipation. The revelations that would shape his journey. "The trials you will face are three: to prove your strength, your wisdom, and your heart. Only by succeeding in all will the hammer acknowledge you as its master," Freydis continued, her voice now a whisper, as if to not disturb the fragile weave of fate. She observed. "Thank you, Freydis. How shall I prepare for these trials?" Eric asked, his resolve forming with each word spoken. "The answers you seek are already within you. Trust in your strength, honor your ancestors, and let your heart lead when sight fails," she advised, a gentle smile touching her lips as she extinguished the flames with a wave of her hand. As Eric stood to leave, Freydis handed him a small, rune-carved stone. "Take this, let it guide you when the path grows dark." Grasping the stone, Eric felt a surge of warmth spread through his palm, its energy reassuring. With a nod of gratitude, he stepped out of the hut, the early morning light now fully breaking through the trees. Armed with the seer's prophecy and the mystical stone, Eric returned to the village, ready to depart with his fellow warriors. Their journey to the Isle of Mist was their spirits bolstered by the promise of divine guidance. The village of Fjordhelm awoke to a morning draped in an uneasy silence, the kind that speaks of impending storms or battles yet to come. Eric and his band of warriors gathered at the shore where their longship, the Sea Eagle, was moored. Its dragon-headed prow faced the sea, ready to cut through the waves like a blade through battle. As the villagers emerged from their homes, drawn by a solemn atmosphere, a sense of communal purpose bound them together. Women braided warriors' hair, intertwining it with charms, and whispered blessings. Men loaded the ship with supplies, salted fish, barrels of fresh water, and bundles of furs. Children darted between the adults, their eyes wide with a mix of fear and fascination. Eric stood out, watching his warriors prepare, his mind replaying Freydis' words. Beside him, Astrid adjusted her sword belt, her face set in a determined frown. Bjorn tested the weight of his Aser, swinging it with a practiced ease that belied the tension in his broad shoulders. "We are ready, Eric," Astrid announced, her voice cutting through the morning chill. Eric nodded, taking one last look at the gathered crowd. He saw in their faces a mixture of hope, fear, and pride. Stepping forward, he raised his voice so all could hear. "People of Fjordhelm, today we set forth on a journey fraught with danger to face trials unknown and foes formidable. We do this not for glory, but for the survival of our home. Remember us in your prayers to the gods. We carry with us your spirit, your strength, and your courage." A murmur of approval rose from the crowd, and an elderly woman stepped forward, her arms raised towards the heavens. She was the village Volva, a priestess old as the hills themselves. With a voice strong and clear, she began to chant, her words ancient and powerful, invoking the protection of the gods. As her chant filled the air, the warriors boarded the ship, each touching the dragon prow in respect and supplication. Before taking their place, Eric was the last to board, pausing to take the rune-carved stone from his pocket. He held it aloft, the early sunlight catching its edges, casting patterns on the rough wood of the deck. "This stone will guide us through darkness," he proclaimed, then tucked it safely away. With a final nod to the Volva, Eric took his place at the stern. Bjorn and 2 others took up the oars, their muscles tensing as they prepared to row away from shore. At a nod from Eric, they pushed off, the ship cutting through the water with graceful ease. Behind them, the villagers sang a haunting melody, their voices carrying over the water, a farewell meant to linger in the hearts of those who journeyed forth. The song spoke of valor, of return, and of hope, a lifeline cast across the deep waters of fate. As the Sea Eagle sailed away from Fjordhelm, the cliffs receding into the mists that seemed to rise to claim them, Eric felt the weight of his quest press upon him. Yet within that weight was a fire, stoked by the seer's words and fueled by the belief of his people. They were bound for the Isle of Mist, where destiny awaited, shrouded in fog and mystery. The sea stretched endless before them, a tapestry of blues and grays undulating with the secrets of the deep. Above, the sky watched, vast and unblinking, a silent guardian on their quest for the hammer of Thor. The journey to the Isle of Mist was marked by a sea that turned increasingly treacherous as the Sea Eagle carved its path through the waves. The sky above brooded with dark clouds, heavy with the threat of a storm, as if nature itself conspired to test the mettle of Eric and his crew, yet driven by the unwavering spirit of their mission. The warriors pressed on, their faces set against the wind that whipped their hair and roared in their ears. Eric stood at the prow, the rune-carved stone clenched in his hand, its warmth a constant reminder of Freydis's words and the protective magic it bore. Every so often, he would glance back at his comrades, their figures steadfast and resolute against the storm's fury. Astrid and Bjorn, alongside the others, each showed the strength of their resolve not through words, but through the steadfast grip on their oars and the determined set of their jaws. As the isle drew nearer, the mist that gave it its name began to rise from the sea like wraiths at twilight. The waters around the isle churned ominously, swirling with currents that threatened to drag them off course. Eric, recalling the seer's warning of guardians and spirits, knew that these were but the first of their trials. Suddenly, a massive wave loomed ahead, as if summoned by the very spirits of the isle. Eric shouted commands over the roar of the water, his voice carrying the urgency of imminent peril. "Brace yours, row hard." The warriors responded with a surge of effort, their oars slicing through the water with renewed vigor. As the wave crashed down upon them, the Sea Eagle shuddered under its weight, but held strong, its sturdy build a testament to the craftsmanship of Fjordhelm's finest. Water flooded the deck, cold and biting. But the ship righted itself, buoyed not only by its design, but by the indomitable spirit of its crew. Clearing the worst of the tumultuous waters, the mists enveloped them completely, reducing the world to a gray whisper around them. The visibility dropped, the familiar world disappeared, and they entered a realm that seemed detached from time and reality. Voices seemed to echo in the mist, an ethereal chorus that was neither fully human nor entirely otherworldly. Eric, gripping the steering oar, peered into the fog. Shapes began to form and dissolve just beyond the edge of sight. Shadows cast by nothing. Silhouettes that flickered between the possible and the impossible and the impossible. The air was thick with the scent of salt and something faintly electric, a charge that tingled against their skin, a prelude to the mystical trials they were soon to face. Astrid moved to stand beside Eric, her eyes scanning the horizon. "What do you see?" she asked, her voice low. "Shadows," Eric replied. The Guardians are near, or perhaps they already here, watching us, testing us. Then let them watch. Bjorn boomed from behind, his voice a defiant challenge. "We will not fall. We have come too far to turn back now." The mist began to glow faintly, an ethereal light that seemed to pulse with life. The air vibrated with the power of ancient magic, a sign that they were nearing their destination, and that their greatest challenges lay just ahead. As the Sea Eagle sailed further into the heart of the mist, Eric felt the stone's warmth increase, a sign that their destiny was close at hand. The trials of the Isle awaited, and with them, the chance to fulfill the prophecy and save their beloved Fjordhelm. Chapter 2. The Quest for the Hammer. As the Sea Eagle anchored off the coast of the Isle of Mist, the eerie silence of the fog-enshrouded island seemed to press against the hearts of Eric and his companions. The warriors disembarked, their boots sinking into the soft, wet sand of the shore. Before them lay a dense forest, its trees looming like silent sentinels in the mist. Eric led the way, the rune-carved stone in his hand, pulsing softly, its glow a faint beacon in the pervasive gray. As they ventured deeper into the woods, the sounds of the sea faded until all that remained was the crunch of their footsteps and the occasional distant cry of a raven. The mist seemed to thicken, swirling around them with an almost sentient will. Shapes moved at the edge of their vision, never quite materializing, always just out of clear sight. The air was cool and damp, heavy with the scent of moss and decayed wood, a testament to the island's undisturbed solitude. Suddenly, a figure appeared before them, cloaked in a shroud of mist. It was a guardian of the isle, an ancient being as old as the land itself. Its eyes, deep and piercing, seemed to look right through them. "Who dares seek hammer of Thor?" Its voice echoed like the wind through the trees. "We are warriors from Fjordhelm," Eric responded boldly, stepping forward. "I am Eric, chosen by prophecy to wield Thor's hammer and defeat the Serpent Jormungandr that threatens our land." The Guardian studied them for a long moment, its gaze unsettling yet filled with a strange wisdom. "Many have sought the hammer and failed. What makes you worthy? Where others were not. Eric felt the weight of the question, knowing that their journey and perhaps their lives depended on his answer. We come not for glory or for power, but to protect our people and preserve our home. Our hearts are pure, our cause just. The guardian remained silent for a time, its eyes softening. Finally, he stepped aside, gesturing towards a path that had not been there moments before. Go then, Eric, of face that prove your worth. Relieved yet tense, the warriors followed the newly revealed path as it wound deeper into the island. The trees gave way to a clearing where the mist seemed to dance and shimmer with an otherworldly light. At the center of the clearing stood an ancient altar, upon which lay a stone slab marked with runes. Astrid leaned in close, her voice a whisper. The trials begin here. Eric approached the altar, his companions forming a circle around it. He placed the rune-carved stone onto the slab, and the runes began to glow, a warm light spreading outwards, bathing the clearing in a golden hue. The air thrummed with power, and a sense of anticipation settled over the group. Suddenly, the ground shook, and from the woods emerged creatures of myth and legend, ethereal beings of air and earth, their forms shifting and changing. Creatures. The first trial was a pup with a steadying grip. Eric drew his sword, his voice carrying clear and strong. Stand ready, let us prove our. The warriors took up defensive positions, their weapons ready, their hearts united by a common cause. The creatures advanced, and the trial of strength began. The clearing erupted into chaos as the ethereal creatures surged forward, their forms shimmering between solidity and mist, making them difficult targets. The warriors of Fjordhelm stood their ground, each face set with determination and focus. Eric engaged the nearest of these beings, his sword meeting resistance as if cutting through a dense fog. With each swing, he felt the force of the Guardian's power, but he also sensed a test within each exchange, a test not merely of physical strength, but of resolve. Astrid fought with the grace and ferocity of a storm, her blade a flash of silver in the golden light. Beside her, Bjorn's assay swung in wide, powerful arcs, each blow sending a guardian reeling back into the mist from which it came. The battle tested not only their skill in arms, but their ability to persevere against an enemy that was unlike any they had faced before. These guardians were of the Isle itself, born from ancient magic, their strengths woven from the very elements of air and earth. As the conflict wore on, Eric noticed that with each guardian they defeated, the mist around them lightened, the air growing clearer. It was as though their worthiness was being measured in the clarity they could bring to the obscure landscape of the trial. Finally, with a powerful swing of his sword, Eric dispatched the last of the ethereal creatures. It dissolved into a cloud of mist that slowly faded away, leaving the clearing calm and the air crisp and clean. Breathing heavily, Eric sheathed his sword and surveyed his companion. They were weary but unharmed, their expressions one of cautious relief. The trial of strength had been passed, but the path of their quest remained fraught with unknown challenges. "Is everyone all right?" Eric asked, his voice echoing slightly in the now silent clearing. "We are," Astrid confirmed, wiping her blade on her cloak before sheathing it. "But what now? The Guardians are. Where's the next trial?" No sooner had she spoken than the ground beneath the stone altar began to glow. Runes similar to those on Eric's stone, illuminated one by one, creating a circle of light that expanded outward. The warriors stepped back as the ground within the circle started to shift, opening up to reveal a staircase leading down into darkness. "The trials continue below," Eric stated, a hint of awe in his voice as he peered into the stairwell. This was but the first. There are more to face, deeper within the aisle. With a determined nod, he led the way, descending the ancient steps that spiraled into the heart of the island. The air grew cooler as they descended, the walls of the stairwell carved with more runes, each glowing faintly, lighting their path. As they reached the bottom, they found themselves in a vast cavern, its ceiling lost to shadows. In the center of the cavern stood 3 stone pedestals, each bearing a different ancient symbol, one of a sword, one of a book, and one of a heart. Eric approached the pedestals, his companion. "These are the symbols of the trials," he deduced, his gaze lingering on each in turn. "Strength we have brought now, wisdom and heart remain." Astrid looked at the book emblazoned pedestal. "Then let us see what wisdom requires of us." As they prepared to engage with the next trial, the cavern seemed to pulse with an ancient energy, as if the very heart of the island awaited to test the depth of their intellect and the purity of their spirits. In the cavernous heart of the Isle of Mist, before the pedestal marked with the symbol of a book, Eric and his companions gathered to face the second trial. The air around them thickened, a tangible sense of expectation hanging heavy. Astrid, ever the keen observer, approached the pedestal. As her hand hovered over the symbol, the air shimmered, and a spectral figure materialized before them. It was an ancient sage, his form translucent and glowing with an inner light. His voice, when he spoke, was like the rustling of old parchment. "Welcome, seekers of the hammer of Thor. To pass the trial of wisdom, you must solve a riddle that has guarded these sacred depths for generations. Fail and remain forever bound to the mist." The warriors exchanged nervous glances. Eric stepped forward, his voice, "We are ready. Suppose you're..." The sage nodded, his eyes twinkling with the flicker of ancient knowledge. "Very well," he began, his voice echoing off the stone walls. "I speak without a mouth and hear without ears. I have no bodies, but I come alive with wind. What am I?" The riddle hummed in the air, its answer a key to their progression. The group huddled together, whispering their thoughts and suggestions. Eric listened to each, weighing their words against the riddle's mysterious nature. Astrid's brow furrowed in calm. "It speaks and hears, but without mouth or ears, and comes alive with wind. It's something ethereal, not beyond, usually more comfortable with an essay than with puzzles." Shrugged. "Sounds like something ghostly, but that's too simple, isn't it?" Eric's mind raced through various possibilities. but it was the sear stone, warm against his skin through his tunic, that gave him a subtle nudge. He remembered the old legends of the Norse gods, tales filled with creatures and beings beyond normal comprehension, yet linked by the natural world. Wait, Eric murmured, his eyes lighting up with realization, is something that carries across the air, something that speaks by carrying messages or sounds. The group looked at him, anticipation grew. Eric took a deep breath and turned back to the sage. The answer is the sage's ethereal form smiled, and the atmosphere in the cavern shifted from tense uncertainty to relieved clarity. Well, answer, you have indeed proven. As the sage's form dissipated, the pedestal glowed warmly, and a section of the cavern wall retracted, revealing a narrow passage that led further into the depths of the aisle. Eric led his companions down the newly revealed path, their torches casting long shadows on the walls. The trial of wisdom had been passed, but the knowledge that one final challenge lay ahead weighed heavily on their spirits. They emerged into another chamber, this one dominated by a large stone heart, the symbol of final trial. As they approached, the air grew thick with palpable emotion, a test of heart, not just of courage, but of purity and intention. The chamber of the heart was bathed in a soft warm light that seemed to emanate from the stone heart itself, casting gentle shadows across the walls. The air was thick with a sense of solemnity and depth, as if the chamber not only housed the physical trial, but also held the essence of countless past endeavors. Eric and his companions approached the stone heart with reverence. This was not a trial to be met with blades or strength, but with the truth of one's innermost self. A faint hum filled the air, resonant and deep, touching the very core of their beings. Stand before the heart, instructed a voice, rich and melodious, as if the chamber itself spoke. Each warrior took their place before the massive stone, their eyes reflecting the flickering light and their faces etched with concentration. The voice continued to wield the hammer of Thor. One must possess a heart pure and devoted to the cause of good beyond personal gain. You will each meet. The ground beneath their feet vibrated slightly, and a wave of energy pulsed from the stone heart, enveloping each warrior in a soft glow. Images began to flash before Eric's eyes, scenes from his past battles, moments of victory and loss, each tinged with the emotions he had felt at the time. Eric saw himself standing over a defeated enemy, his sword drawn. He remembered the temptation to end the man's life out of vengeance rather than justice. In the vision, he saw himself lower the sword, offering mercy instead. The memory was a test of his commitment to justice over revenge, a crucial aspect of his leadership and moral compass. Beside him, Astrid faced her own trauma. Her visions swirled with scenes of her family, her early days training with the sword, her resolve tested through personal loss, and the fierce protection of her kin. Her decision to fight alongside Eric, not for glory, but for the safety of her people, shone through, affirming her heart's alignment with the trial's demands. Bjorn, too, was immersed in his trial, his usually jovial face set in a serious expression. He relived his greatest fears and doubts, his moments of hesitation on the battlefield, and his ultimate choice to stand firm, protecting those who could not protect themselves. As the vision subsided, the chamber's atmosphere lightened, the heavy air lifting like a fog at sunrise. The stone heart pulsed once more, then settled into a quiet, almost approving hum. The trial of the heart is complete, the voice announced, now gentle and reassuring. You have each shown the purity and courage required to move forward. Relief washed over Eric and his companions, their chests heaving with deep, unburdened breaths. They shared a look of mutual respect and understanding, their bonds strengthened by the shared ordeal. The wall behind the stone heart now shifted, opening to reveal yet another passage. This one led upwards, the incline suggesting it headed towards the heart of the island and perhaps towards the hammer of Thor itself. Eric led the way, his heart lighter than it had been since the journey began. The trials of strength, wisdom, and heart had been conquered, but he knew the final test, the actual claiming of the hammer, was still to come. As they ascended, the air grew cooler and charged with anticipation. They were nearing their quest's culmination, the moment when fate would reveal whether Eric was truly meant to wield the power of Thor. The winding passage led upward, the air growing colder and charged with a palpable sense of destiny as Eric and his companions ascended. Each step seemed to draw them closer, not just to their goal, but to a deeper understanding of their own journey. The trials had tested them, refined them, and now, as they approached the sanctum of the hammer of Thor, each warrior felt a solemn responsibility weighing upon their shoulders. As they reached the summit of the path, the corridor opened into a vast cavern, illuminated by shafts of light piercing through cracks in the ceiling. The beams highlighted a central dais on which rested an anvil made of stone, and upon it the hammer of Thor. Its handle was wrapped in leather, aged but impeccable, and the head was adorned with runes that pulsed with a soft golden light. The sight of the hammer sent a wave of awe through the group. Here was the object of their quest, the source of hope for their people, lying within reach yet still guarded by the ancient magics of the Isle. Eric stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. As he approached the dais, the air around him thickened, and the light from the runes grew brighter. A deep voice, resonant and commanding, filled the cave. Who approaches the hammer? I am Eric of Fjordhelm, Eric called out, his voice steady despite the awe he felt. Chosen by prophecy, tested by trials, I seek to wield the hammer to save my people from the Serpent Jormungandr. The cavern seemed to evaluate his declaration, the silence stretching long and deep. Then the voice spoke. Prove your from the shadows around the dais, a figure emerged taller and more imposing than any human. It was the final guardian, a being of pure elemental force, its form crackling with the energy of thunderstorms. It wielded a massive sword that hummed with power. A clear challenge lay before Eric. Without hesitation, Eric drew his own sword, feeling the eyes of his companions on him, their faith and their fears mingling in the air. The guardian moved first, its movements echoing with the force of nature itself, each strike powerful enough to shake the cavern. Eric dodged and parried, his body reacting with a honed instinct sharpened by his trials. He understood now that this was not just a physical battle. It was a test of his determination, his courage, and his spirit. With a mighty cry, Eric found an opening and struck, not with the blade, but with his will, pushing forward with all the strength of his heart and soul behind his sword. The guardian paused, its form flickering, then stepped back, lowering its weapon. Well fought, warrior. The guardian, you have proven your worth. As the guardian dissipated like mist caught in sunlight, Eric approached the hammer of Thor. His hand trembled as he reached out, fingers brushing against the cool leather of the handle. A surge of power coursed through him, a confirmation of his right to wield this mighty weapon. Lifting the hammer, Eric felt its weight, not just physical, but symbolic. It was the weight of his people's hopes, their fears, and their future. He turned to his companions, his face set with the resolve of a true leader. We have what we came for, he announced, his voice echoing in the now silent cavern. Let us return home and fulfill our destiny. With the hammer of Thor in hand, the warriors retraced their steps through the aisle, each heart lighter yet filled with the solemnity of their impending confrontation with Jormungandr. They had sought and found their miracle, not just in the hammer, but within themselves. Chapter 3. The Battle of Fjordhelm. As the sea eagle sliced through the grey waters, returning to Fjordhelm, a sense of urgency filled the air. Eric stood at the prow, the hammer of Thor held securely at his side, its presence a constant reminder of the burdens and hopes it carried. The sea, once a foreboding expanse, now seemed to part willingly before them, as if even the ocean recognized the power they brought back to their besieged village. The coast of Fjordhelm came into view, dark. The cliffs that had always been a symbol of enduring strength were now marked by the scars of Jormungandr's wrath. Smoke rose in plumes from parts of the village, and the once vibrant docks were broken. Their wood splintered and scattered across the sand. As the ship made landfall, the villagers gathered on the shore, their faces a tapestry of hope and despair. Children clung to their mothers, and warriors, weary from battle, looked up with renewed vigor at the sight of Eric and his companions, bearing not just weapons, but the promise of salvation. Eric disembarked first, his boots sinking into the sand he had once played in as a boy. Now, as a warrior, he returned not to seek refuge, but to provide it. He raised the hammer high, its surface catching the first light of day, a signal to all that the time to cower was over. We have returned, and with us, the power to save our home. Eric's voice, strong and clear, cut through the morning air, rallying the spirits of the weary villagers. The reunion was brief, filled with hurried embraces and quick exchanges. There was no time for long reunions or tales of the journey. Not yet. The Serpent could return at any moment, and they had to be ready. Together with the village leader, Eric quickly strategized their defense. The hammer of Thor was their ultimate weapon, but it would take more than a single blow to defeat Jormungandr. The village warriors, inspired by Eric's success, prepared to stand alongside him, forming a battle line along the coast. Women and children helped to fortify what remained of the village defenses, turning every building and every street into a stronghold. As the sun climbed higher, a tense silence fell over Fjordhelm. The sea began to churn, and a deep, ominous rumbling filled the air. The serpent was approaching, drawn back to the village by either rage or some dark instinct. Eric stood at the forefront, the hammer in his hand, not just a weapon but a beacon of hope. Beside him stood Astrid, her sword drawn and Bijor, his axe ready for what might come. Together they waited, the weight of their people's futures resting on their armored shoulders. The water at the bay began to froth and boil as the massive form of Jormungandr breached the surface. Its scales glistened like wet obsidian, and its eyes burned with malice. With a roar that shook the very stones of Fjordhelm, it launched itself toward the shore. "Stand!" Eric shouted, his voice a rallying cry. "For Fjordhelm and for us." With that, the final battle. The monstrous form of Jormungandr surged toward the shore, its immense body coiling and twisting through the frothy sea, waves crashing wildly against the rocks. The people of Fjordhelm braced themselves, their faces set with grim determination as they faced the embodiment of their fears. Eric, standing resolute at the forefront, clutched the hammer of Thor, feeling its power thrum through his veins, a stark contrast to the icy dread that the sight of the serpent invoked. Beside him, his warriors stood ready, their weapons poised for battle, their spirit be Eric's unwavering confidence. As the serpent approached, it unleashed a furious roar, spewing venomous water that sizzled upon contact with the sand. The villagers responded with a volley of arrows and spears, some finding their mark upon the beast's scaled hide, though they seemed little more than pinpricks against such colossal might. "Focus your attack," Eric commanded, his voice cutting through the cacophony of battle. "Aim for its eyes and under." With precise coordination born of desperate necessity, the warriors adjusted their aim, their next volleys striking more vulnerable flesh. Eliciting roars of pain from the beast, encouraged, they redoubled their effort, their actions a dance of survival against the serpent's relentless assault. Eric knew that arrows and spears alone would not suffice to bring down such a creature. He awaited the perfect moment, the hammer of Thor pulsing with a divine light, eager to fulfill its purpose. As Jormungandr reared back, preparing to strike directly at the heart of the village, Eric saw his chance. With a mighty cry, he charged forward, the hammer raised high. The air crackled with electric energy, the skies darkening as if in anticipation of the clash. As he neared the beast, Eric leaped, swinging the hammer with all his might, aiming for the serpent's head. The impact was like thunder, a shockwave rippling through the air, the ground trembling beneath their feet. Jormungandr's head recoiled from the blow, a terrible wail echoing across the battlefield. The hammer's divine power surged, striking not just flesh, but the dark essence of the beast itself. Stunned but not yet defeated, the serpent thrashed wildly, its tail sweeping across the beat, knocking aside shields and warriors. With brutal force, Eric scrambled to his feet, the hammer still in his grip, his body aching from the effort of the blow. "We must press on," he shouted, rallying his force. Strike now, while it is day. Seizing the moment of confusion, the warriors surged forward, their attacks coordinated and relentless. Astrid and Bjorn led charges, driving deeper into the fray, their blades slick with the dark blood of the beast. Eric, summoning the last reserves of his strength, raised the hammer once more. As Jörmungandr opened its maw to strike, he drove the hammer down into the creature's skull with a force that seemed to split the world itself. The serpent's roar cut abruptly, its body shuddering as the light of life faded from its eyes. With a convulsive twit, it lay still, the sea around it stained with darkness. Exhausted, panting, Eric stood over the defeated beast, the hammer of Thor still glowing softly in his hand. The battle was won, but the cost was written on the faces of his people, tired, wounded, but alive. As the reality of their victory sank in, a cheer rose from the villagers, a sound of relief and triumph that mingled with the mourning of their losses. They had survived, their home was safe, and the legend of Eric and the hammer of Thor would be told for generations. As the dust settled and the tumult of battle quieted, the villagers of Fjordhelm emerged cautiously from their hiding places, their eyes wide with a mixture of awe and disbelief. The monstrous body of Jörmungandr lay motionless upon the shore, a dark testament to the peril they had faced and overcome. Eric, still clutching the hammer of Thor, his armor dented and smeared with the grime of battle, walked slowly among his people. His gaze met theirs, each look conveying words of gratitude, relief, and respect. The weight of leadership and the burden of battle melded into a profound sense of duty fulfilled. Let us tend to our wounded and honor our fallen, Eric declared, his voice resonant with the fatigue of battle, yet firm with the command of a leader. The villagers nodded, their movements deliberate as they set about the solemn task. The healers, with their herbs and bandages, moved among the injured, their hands gentle and efficient. The air was filled with the soft murmurs of comfort and the occasional groan of pain, a stark reminder of the cost of their freedom. Meanwhile, Astrid and Bjorn, along with other warriors, attended to the daunting task of dealing with Jörmungandr's remains. The serpent's body, a massive barricade upon their shore, was both a hazard and a potential harbinger of disease. We will build a pyre, Astrid proposed, her voice steady despite the weariness that shadowed her features. It will serve as a funeral flame for both the beast and those we lost. Let it be a beacon of our resilience. The task was immense, but the villagers united in their effort, gathering wood and kindling from the nearby forests. The construction of the pyre became a communal endeavor, a physical and symbolic cleansing of the darkness that had descended upon their home. As night fell, the pyre was lit, its flames soaring into the twilight sky. The villagers gathered around, their faces illuminated by the firelight, their shadows long on the sand. Eric stood before them, the hammer of Thor beside him, its duty fulfilled. Tonight, we burn away the past. Eric addressed the crowd, his words rising over the crackle of flames. And from these ashes, we will build a stronger, safer Fjordhelm. Let this fire light our way forward. Tears mingled with smiles as the villagers embraced, their bonds strengthened through shared adversity. Songs were sung, stories were told, and the names of the fallen were spoken aloud, each a sacred utterance, to keep their memory alive. As the fire burned down to embers, the sense of peace that had seemed so elusive now wrapped around them like a warm cloak. The serpent was defeated, the danger was past, and though the road to recovery would be long and fraught with challenges, they faced it as a united community. Eric, looking out over the people he had sworn to protect, felt a deep, abiding pride. The hammer of Thor lay quiet beside him, its glow dim, but its presence a constant reminder of the strength and courage of his people. In the quiet of the night, as the last flames flickered and died, Fjordhelm slept peacefully, the nightmares of the serpent banished by the light of their unity and the fire of their spirit. As the first light of dawn pierced the horizon, it painted the sky in hues of gold and crimson, reflecting the fiery end of the night's pyre. The village of Fjordhelm, though scarred by battle, woke to a morning of newfound peace, the air clear of the oppressive shadow that had once loomed over them. The villagers, rejuvenated by the victory and the symbolic cleansing of the night before, gathered in the heart of the village square. Here, amidst the rebuilding efforts, a sense of hope and determination thrived. Every repaired home and clear street was a testament to their resilience and unity. Eric, having laid down the mighty hammer of Thor at the base of the village's great hall, a symbol of their triumph, joined his fellow villagers in the square. The elder, Leif, stood waiting with a solemn grace, holding a scroll that bore the names of all who had fought and fallen. We gather not only to celebrate our victory, but to remember those who gave their lives for our safety. Leif announced, his voice echoing across the gathered crowd. Their sacrifice will be engraved in the heart of Fjordhelm, never to be forgot. One by one, the names were read aloud, each followed by a moment of silence. The air was filled with a mixture of grief and gratitude, each name a reminder of the cost of peace. After the solemn remembrances, the tone shifted as Leif turned his wise eyes upon Eric. And now we honor those who have led us through the darkness. Eric, son of Fjordhelm, wielder of Thor's hammer, stepped forward. As Eric approached, the villagers cheered, their voices a chorus of gratitude and respect. Leif placed a wreath made of oak leaves and wildflowers upon Eric's head, a symbol of honor and leadership. Under your courage and strength, we found our way back to the light, Leif continued. May this wreath remind you of the life and growth you have helped preserve. Eric bowed his head, humbled by the honor. I did not stand alone, he said, raising his voice so all could hear. Each of you, with your bravery and unyielding spirit, forged the path we walked. Together, we have saved. The square erupted in applause, the villagers' faces alight with joy and pride. As the celebration continued, tables were brought forth, laden with food preserved from the feast that had been interrupted by the serpent's arrival. Now, it served as a feast of victory. Laughter and music filled the air. Children ran about playing games, and the warriors, including Astrid and Bjorn, shared tales of the battle, their roles immortalized in the telling. The community, bonded by shared adversity, rejoiced in their collective strength and the promise of peaceful days ahead. As the sun climbed higher, casting its warm light over the village, Eric stood beside Astrid, watching the festivities. We have been through darkness, but today we celebrate the light, he said, his eyes reflecting not just the joy of the day, but the resolve for the future. Astrid nodded, her hand resting on the hilt of her sword, a reminder of the battles they had faced and those they might still encounter. And should darkness fall again, it will find Fjordhelm ready, with you to lead us. Eric smiled, his gaze sweeping over his people, his heart full. And I will stand ready, as long as the gods grant me strength. As the day wore on, the celebration of life and victory continued. A bright chapter in the saga of Fjordhelm, written with the courage of its people and sealed with the promise of enduring peace. As the day's festivities slowly drew to a close, the setting sun cast long shadows across Fjordhelm, the golden light reflecting off the tranquil waters that had once churned with the Serpent's fury. The village, rejuvenated by the day's celebrations and the collective relief of survival, settled into a peaceful evening. Eric stood at the edge of a rock in the sea. The memories of the recent battle mingled with the sounds of laughter and music still drifting from the village square. He felt a profound connection to this land and its people, strengthened by the trials they had endured together. Beside him, Astrid joined, her presence a comforting reminder of the strength and loyalty that had been crucial to their victory. "It's a beautiful evening," she remarked, her gaze following Eric's out to the horizon where the sea met the sky. "It is," Eric agreed, his voice reflect. "It's evenings like these that remind me why we fought so hard, why we must always be prepared to protect what is ours." Astrid nodded, her eyes. "The serpent is defeated, but the world is wide and full of unknowns. Your leadership will be key to navigating whatever comes next." Eric turned to look at her, his expression serious yet calm. "I will do whatever is necessary to ensure the safety of Fjordhelm. With the hammer of Thor and the courage of our people, we can face any challenge." Back in the village, the elders convened in the great hall, discussing plans for rebuilding and strengthening the village defenses. The lessons of the recent attack were fresh in their minds, and they were determined to fortify Fjordhelm against future threats. Leif, the elder, stood addressing the gathered village. We have been given a second chance, a new dawn. Let us use it twice. Let us build not just stronger walls, but stronger bonds among us. The villagers responded with nods and murmurs of agreement, their spirits buoyed by the day's victory and the wise words of their elder. Plans were made to expand the watchtowers along the coast and to train more of the villagers in the arts of war and survival. Meanwhile, children played around the remnants of the feast, their laughter a balm to the hearts of their parents. They were the future of Fjordhelm, the reason for every measure of protection, every story told of bravery and sacrifice. As night fell, Eric returned to the village center, where a final bonfire was lit. The people of Fjordhelm gathered one last time, their faces illuminated by the firelight. Eric took a moment to address them all. "Today, we celebrated not just a victory over a beast, but over fear. We stood together fought as one, and let this day be remembered not for the battle, but for the peace it heralds. Cheers rose up around the fire, a community united stronger than ever. The hammer of Thor, now resting securely in the great hall, was more than a weapon. It was a symbol of their resilience and unity. In the days that followed, Fjordhelm would thrive under Eric's leadership. The village would grow, bolstered by the stories of their courage and the legend of the Hammer of Thor. Peace, a precious gift forged through trial and sacrifice, would flourish in the shelter of their unity and vigilance. Thus, in the land of Fjordhelm, under the watchful gaze of the gods and the steadfast leadership of Eric, the dawn of peace stretched wide and bright, promising a future filled with hope and prosperity. The tale of Eric and the Hammer of Thor ends here, but the saga of Fjordhelm continues. Each day a new page in the story of a village bound by courage, guided by wisdom, and protected by the strength of their convictions.